We've talked a little bit about preview mode, but I want to go over some of the things we talked about and maybe discover some things that are new that we haven't talked about. Preview mode is very important. It's a lot like browse mode, but we want to make sure we cover it and see what the differences are between browse mode and preview mode. But before we do that, I want to clarify something about revert record. As you remember, previously we talked about how you can type something in here and choose revert record. Now, revert record won't be available as soon as I click outside of these fields. That's because it's now saved. So that is saved. So if I type in Bobby whatever and then choose revert record, you notice it goes back to Bobby, not to Bob. So you need to understand how records are committed. So one way is to click outside. Another way is to hit the enter key on the keypad. Another way is to go to another record. You can close the file. You can go to a different layout, which we haven't covered yet. There's lots of ways to commit a record. And so you need to realize that you can only revert records between commits. You can't expect it to know where to go back to. It's kind of like an undo. Undos don't go all the way back. You can only go back a certain distance. So revert record only goes back to the last commit. So let's try going into, we'll first fix Bob's record here. He might not like to be called Bobby. And we'll go into preview mode. And we could go through the view menu here. We can also click preview on here. So this is one of the handy things about the new status toolbar. Now, what we want to do is take a look at the way the new status toolbar works. It's a lot like the old status area that was down the left-hand side in previous versions, but it's got some really cool new features. But let's cover the basics here. Here's your Rolodex, goes from page to page to page, and I know we covered that. But FileMaker can only fit so many records per page. Now you can change that with sliding objects, which is done in layout mode, and we're going to go over that later. You can say slide these objects through unused field space so you can fit more records per page, or you can put less fields on here so you can fit more. But what you do want to realize is that it's also not putting half a record down here. That's another option set in layout mode, where you can say, how does this record behave when I'm printing? So you got to realize that layout mode and preview mode work together a lot. It's kind of like the way that find mode finds records in browse mode. Well, layout mode shows you what happens in preview mode. It also shows you what happens in browse mode, but in a different way. It all really has to do with printing, because this is a representation of what your data is going to look like when it prints out. It should be exactly the same. It's never going to be exactly, but it should be very, very close. And in most cases, you won't even notice the difference. So again, you can walk through your pages. So we had record 1 and 2 on the first page. We have record 3 and 4 on this next page. And so on as we go. It looks like we're going to get about 2 records per page here. And again, this question mark is there because FileMaker has a performance consideration. Don't try to calculate all the pages, because it'll take longer to get into preview mode. Maybe you only want to see the first page. Why should we calculate all the pages? And so to get it to calculate all of them, you have to go to the last record with this little slider here, and now you know how many pages you have. So that was important, just go to the last page for you. Now, what you'll notice is that you have a different toolbar. You have Save as Excel and Save as PDF, Print, and Page Setup, which are all options available under the menus. As you can see, Page Setup, or if you're on Windows, Print Setup. You have Print, and then you have Save, Send Records as Excel and PDF. They're just very conveniently placed here. In fact, you can go in and customize the status toolbar to put whatever you want in there according to what works in preview mode. So if you want to have the debugger in there, you can do that. If you want to have export abilities. So it's important to know that you can do each status toolbar in each mode, customize it separately. So let's take a look at the rest of this menu here, the records menu, because it is still called records. It's not called preview, because really these are records. Think about it. Find mode is requests, layout mode is layouts, but browse mode and preview mode are both looking at records. Just preview lets you see all the records on a page view. It fits as many records per page as possible. But you really can't create new records, duplicate records. You can't, what record, if you're deleting a record, would you be acting on? There's 2 on this page. How would you know which one you're acting on? Or actually, this one only has 1 because it's the last page, but you get the idea. Now, you can still choose go to record, but this is going to go to previous and next pages. Refresh window still here. You can show all records if you want. So if you have a found set, you want to see all the records, we can certainly do that. or we can show omitted only and reverse that found set, but we're going to go over that more later. And you can sort records and do things like that, but most of these items are dimmed out here simply because they're not available in preview mode. A couple more will become available, but for the most part, just realize that I don't want you to get confused. You come in here, why can't I do a new record? Well, that's because you're in preview mode. And also, if we go into page setup or print setup, whether it's through the menu or through here, realize that whatever settings are in here, whatever printer you have selected, whatever paper size and whatever orientation is going to affect, and whatever scale you have, it's going to affect the way that preview displays because it affects the way that print displays. So we'll try a simple change to landscape mode. You notice that all of a sudden we're in landscape mode. Very simple. So realize that that will change. In fact, you can see that we have this margin around here. There's some more settings from layout mode that we'll cover that determine what your margins are. Some of it's determined by your printer, but you can also set it specifically to be a ½ inch, let's say all the way around, and disregard the minimum settings for your printer. So realize a lot of these things are changed by different areas. Print setup or page setup, layout mode can affect the way this looks. So let's go back into page setup or print setup and change it back, and again, paper size and the type of printer could affect this. So there's your preview mode. It doesn't require as much time as browse mode, but do realize it's showing your records as pages. That's the most important thing here. In fact, I would rather do save as PDF from here because PDF is going to be in pages. So it's better to look at what your pages look like before you save as PDF. It'll really give you a good idea what your PDF document is going to look like.